Warrior runes. Sometimes you'll see these. As a matter of fact, here's an example. You'll see this as like a duelist rune. You may see them as something else once again because um, the dungeon boss team isn't consistent. You can see there's all sorts of different icons and everything else too. And the stats are all potentially different. The three variations of stats that I've seen are defense, attack, and health, but there's probably more. So what warrior runes do, and I call them warrior, any of the runes that have this fourth stat are considered warrior runes, whether it's a duelist rune or anything else, is they provide a fixed percentage chance to add an extra basic attack. So in like elites and superiors, typically it's going to be 20. You might see a grader that only has 16, but you might have a grader that has 20. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, they're going to provide a chance to add an extra basic attack. Some limitations with that. So basic attacks, they're those yellow basic non-special attacks, or revenge attacks, anything like that, retaliation, any other attack that's not you clicking on an ability will have a chance to trigger an extra basic attack. It can also be a basic epic attack. Because the epic attacks are basically basic attacks that get a bonus. So it will not trigger on abilities. So if you use a special ability, it will not trigger this rune. So this is better for heroes that are following up other heroes. Valken does an attack, and his leadership ability causes, or the lead by example ability causes others to follow him up with his attacks. Or Krex doing an attack on anybody that attacks a Gorgon, or Creel doing follow-up attacks that any Gorgon makes, or there's Bring It Down from Deadeye, all ranged allies will make an attack, like anything like that. Or Drac doing his S1 ability, causing everybody to make an attack. Like those kind of things are where basic attacks for following will happen. You can also just manually just click on somebody without an ability lit too, and that'll be a basic attack. But on a basic attack, you have a chance to get an extra basic attack. Now these stack multiplicatively. So you can see here the first attack, or the first rune that has extra basic attack, assuming it's a 20% rune, the first rune gives 20%. The second rune is going to, so it's now the 20% is set aside. So now what's left is the 80% chance that's left over to not to get it. So now the second rune is going to take 20% of that 80%, which is 16%. So with two runes, you now have a 36% chance. The next one, same thing, it adds 12.8%. The fourth one gives 10.4%. And the fifth one gives 8.19%, capping out at a total of 67.232%. So that's effectively, it's diminishing returns. It's because you're not adding all of these up. Otherwise, it'd be a 100% chance for an extra basic attack, and that's absolutely not the case. So they stack up like so. These are very, very useful, especially for heroes that make a bunch of attacks to begin with. Drac, Hansuke, Hagrum. I mean, there's all sorts of heroes that are great, or even heroes that are doing follow-up attacks. They're going to be good to have this kind of thing, because it's a bunch of free damage, and it can be free extra stuff going on and everything else. So these are great. Highly recommend getting these. Unbreakable Heart. So Unbreakable Heart, they're always blue. So far, at least at the time of this video, who knows. They will typically have an icon that looks something like this, but that's not a guarantee. You'll actually see some unbreakable hearts that drop in dungeons and stuff that don't actually have the last ability. It's kind of funny. They typically have defense. Some of them have health. There was a rare door from an event that had a rune or a version that had attack, which is very rare for a blue rune to have attack as a primary and secondary stat. So these were very, very nice. But that's what they typically look like. So what it does, and you'll see these abbreviated just as UH, these will say when a hero will take enough damage to be killed, the hero is instead left at 1 hit point, and that instance of Unbreakable Heart is expended. It does stack, so if you have 2 Unbreakable Heart runes, you'll get from however many hit points down to 0, and then you'll get immediately put back to 1 hit point, and that layer of Unbreakable Heart goes away. Say you get healed, and you have 2 Unbreakable Heart runes, you either get healed or you get hit again. It's going to take you down to 0, and then that Unbreakable Heart's going to put you at 1, and that second Unbreakable Heart is going away. Now, just from runes, you can only have 2 Unbreakable Hearts. Technically, Valken could have 3. Ice Bloom could have 3. There might be another case. Technically, any blue hero could have 3 because I think Valken, one of them provides it to the whole party, or there's a Sir William provides it to the whole party or something like that. Typically, you're not going to have more than 2, but you might. And only 2 from runes, though. The things to know about Unbreakable Heart is it's treated as a shield. So if you're hit by somebody with shield piercing, it's going to go right through that Unbreakable Heart and like it wasn't even there. And you're just going to die. So you can't absolutely rely on Unbreakable Heart anymore. Not that it was completely reliable before that, but yeah. So Unbreakable Heart, it usually pays to have an Unbreakable Heart because it's also, you could take 1,000,000 points of damage. Your hero could have 10 hit points left. You take 1,000,000 points of damage and you're back down to 1 hit point. The overload doesn't matter. So it really does save you from getting obliterated by a big hit. Agnon dropping you, for example, or whatever. So some of the specials, technically there's 5, but the other, like the green one is kind of like meh. Well, I think it can be elite, so never mind. So there are 4 specials. Now these specials have special crafting requirements. They don't use the same types of materials that the basic runes do, and they are only at most superior. So there are 4 kinds. There's Guardian, Incineration, Survivor, and Corruption. So Guardian and Survivor are defensive, Incineration and Corruption are offensive. For superior runes, a typical like superior heroic rune that's an attack-based one would have 607 attack, whereas these at the same level have 625. They are at a higher base stat scaling than other runes at their level are. So they are, and that does get multiplied out based on stars and everything else. So kind of bear that in mind, but each one has kind of its own special effect. So the Guardian rune is the best single defense rune in the game. It gives strong defense base stats, plus it gives a buff, like that taunt rune, the taunt buff. The Guardian rune defense buff is massive. You can get heroes into the like high 20s, low 30s as a result of a Guardian rune. And when you take that rune off, it'll drop them by 10, 15,000 defense, because it's based on whatever defense you're at. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's big. So the higher your defense is before that buff is added, the better that buff is for you. So it is, and it lasts for 3 rounds from the start of the round, or from the start of the match, unless it's purged or something like that. So, and they do not stack with each other. They do stack. Taunt and Guardian does stack. So you can have the Taunt rune and the Guardian rune. Absolutely you can. But you can't stack several taunt buffs or several Guardian buffs. You can only have one of each. You'll still get the defense stats, but you won't get anything else. So it pays to have one Guardian rune. Incineration is just a chance to burn on hit. It's got the high stat level. Corruption is the same thing, chance to disease on hit, high stat level. Survivor is the other interesting one, and these runes are all potentially useful for crafting. If you really want to max out your damage or something like that, Incineration or Corruption are decent for that. But Survivor is good defense, and it provides the Cleansing Regeneration buff, which clears 1 debuff at the end of every round. Not at the end of your turn. Like a hero takes a turn, they're not going to get at the end of their turn, they're not going to get cleared. But at the end of that round where all heroes have acted, then it's going to clear a debuff. Also for heroes that get bonuses based on buffs like Iris, it does count as a buff in that regard. So these 4 they're more expensive to craft significantly, require special materials, but they have pretty good abilities. Shield piercing. So we talked about these. These are, so any type of shield in the game, which is going to be Aegis shield, damage shields, unbreakable heart, the barbarian, Drac special or passive that means they can't be reduced below 1 hit point, anything like that. There's Hagram has an ability like that. Any of those abilities, shield piercing gets passed. Like most of these runes, there tends to be 3 flavors: a defensive variant, an attack variant, and a health variant. They do come in all colors. So purple, blue, green, and yellow, I have for sure. I might be wrong in that there might not be a red one. I think I have all of the shield piercing runes that have ever been released, to my knowledge, but I might have just missed it or something like that too. So it is possible that there's a red one that I just have somewhere on a hero that I didn't notice. So they only function on basic or epic attacks. They do work through splash damage. So if your epic attack, for example, Therend, his epic attack it gives a chance for his attack to become a splash attack where it'll hit everybody around. That will work with splash damage or with shield piercing. And it bypasses the shield, pierces the shield, it doesn't break the shield. It used to break the shield, but they've changed it. So the attack goes through, but the shield stays intact, so somebody else that follows an attack up is going to have to break the shield before they can pass it. Against heroes like with damage reflection, like Alexandros or Lily, if you have shield piercing and the attack carries shield piercing, then it will get through without taking the reflected damage. So shield piercing is very, very valuable. These are not craftable. They're only droppable, you can only get these from events. Bulwark, these are craftable. They're craftable only. Of the craftable runes, these are going to be the best ones that one of the best ones you're going to be able to craft. After a while, you're going to get so many of these types of runes that you probably won't need to craft many. But until you start building up a good roster of runes, Bulwarks are a solid choice to craft. The only color you're not going to see them in is, red and green in terms of craftable. So you're going to get purples, blues, and yellows. They have different levels depending on different levels of stats. Basically, when you craft runes, there's a range, like of percentage. I think it's up like between 0 and 16%. Anubis, actually, a friend of mine, knows the mechanics of this a little bit more, but there is a variance when you craft rune. They're not always going to have all the same stats. Some are going to be slightly more powerful than others. As you can see here, these are 4 elite bulwark runes, so they're all the same level. They're all 6-star or 5-star. They're all legendary. This one is 612 defense, 649 defense, 625 defense, 662 defense. So these stats can vary because they're crafted. Either way, they're usually still pretty good. So they're going to typically have defense is always going to be their first stat. The second stat could be health or it could be defense. The blue, I think, can have damage reduction as well instead of health. Purple is defense and health. Yellow is defense and health. And then the fourth stat is just random based on the passive. The only way to guarantee you're going to get a fourth stat is to use the... when you're crafting it, there's the button that maximizes automatically. Like you don't take a risk. You just hit maximize or whatever, and it's gonna max it out. That's the only way to guarantee you get a fourth stat. You can potentially get it by leveling it up, but there's no guarantee. I've got a whole bunch of runes where I was trying to optimize the gem cost and missed out on fourth stats. So there's not really much to say about these. They're a good craft choice. They're high defense, very reusable in the long term. I still use bulwark runes to this day.